Hey everybody, I'm Chris, and I'm going to bring you a little deck tech on some modern elves. So we're going to start off with the lands. It's Cavern of Souls is one of the first ones. So you name a creature type. Normally you can add one mana, one generic mana to your mana pool, or add one mana of any color to your mana pool. Spend this mana only to cast a creature spell with the chosen type, and that spell can't be countered. And that's why I consider this kind of a staple land. If someone's trying to run Chalice or counter your big impactful spells, this helps you get around it. I run 3 forests. I run a 4 of Gilt Palace. It's a little bit harder to find card, but it's still attainable. And comes into play, you may reveal an elf card from your hand. If you don't, Gilt Palace comes into play tap. You're going to do a turn 1 mana generator anyway, so might as well just get it to come into play untapped. Overgrown Tomb, just in case you need to fetch. Maybe you didn't get any of your Gilt Palaces. 2 Temple Gardens, and that's more for the sideboard. Verdant Catacombs and Windswept Heath. You want to keep, you can help thin the deck out and keep probability the most in your favor. So we're going to start off with some of the less impacting. Land of War Elves is a standard 1/1 mana generator, and that's what really makes this deck tick is the hurry up and get out in front. And an Elvish Mystic. We have Dwynen's Elite. This is a relatively new card. I feel it kind of helped put this deck on the map. When Dwynen's Elite enters the battlefield, if you control another elf, put a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token onto the battlefield. We have Nettle Sentinel. It's just a 2/2, doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. Whenever you play a green spell, you may untap Nettle Sentinel. And what really goes nicely with this is the Heritage Druid, which is tap 3 untapped elves you control, add 3 mana to your mana pool. So if you get 2 or 3 Nettle Sentinels, you tap your 2 and your Heritage Druid or whichever one you like. You play your green spell. Well, Nettle Sentinel says when you play a green spell, you may untap it. It doesn't have to resolve. It's a cast trigger essentially. So that's how you start generating massive amounts of mana. Elvish Visionary. When Elvish Visionary enters the battlefield, draw a card. This is our card draw engine. Help refill the hand a little bit. Elvish Archdruid. This is another. It's not only a lord, but it gives us massive amounts of mana. So add 1 green mana to your mana pool for each elf you control. So if you've gone bonkers and left your Elvish Archdruid on tap, you could potentially have access to a massive amount of mana. 4 of Shaman of the Pack, another relatively new card. When Shaman of the Pack enters the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to the number of elves you control. So it's a fireball on a stick. It's pretty nice. It's not only quarterable, but you can collect company off of it, and we'll get into that later. And then Azuri. So this tends to be the most typical route people win. It's 1 and 2 green. Regenerate another target elf. Well, as long as you have Elvish Archdruid, they kind of play with each other, so you'll have the mana to regenerate all your elves, except for Aziri himself. And then 2 and 3 green. Elf creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample until end of turn. So it's an overrun effect. It's the easy way to win right there. So if the fireball didn't finish them off, odds are you're going 4, 5, or more wide. You give them all +3/+3 and trample. Most opponents just can't deal with that. So how do we kind of cheat stuff in more? Well, you have Court of Calling. This will help get you. Let's say you've gone through your Elvish Visionaries. You just haven't got to your Aziri or the Shaman of the Pack to end the game, which are uncounterable if you're using Cavern of the Souls to cast those. But let's say you didn't draw them and you can't use your Cavern, so you can try and cord for them at end of turn. Bring them in and then win the game. It's got Convoke, so search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost X or less and put it into the battlefield. Put it onto the battlefield. Then shuffle your library. And then the card people hated for so long, Collected Company. Look at the top 6 cards of your library, Put 2 creature cards with converted mana cost 3 or less from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Now this doesn't, when you look at the cost of the average cards, unless you're going to hit Shaman of the Pact or Aziri, you're really not gaining much by hitting these other ones, but it's all about just getting out there, getting wide first. So this is just another way for forward mana. Kind of look at it as free card draw. You get to play this spell, and you get to put those onto the battlefield, whereas we have less card draw manipulation, so we'll just put stuff at the end of turn right on the battlefield, have it to our access at the beginning of the next turn. Hopefully you hit an Aziri, because he's 3, and then you can just overrun and win the game. So the sideboard, because you have chords and collected companies, the sideboard is kind of like a toolbox. So you have an Abrupt Decay, can't be countered, destroy target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less. So if you have something you just need to get off the battlefield, this is a good way to get rid of it. Burrington Forge Tender, this helps against the Wrath effects. These early game interactions that deal 2 to all creatures, or even something that you let's say you need Heritage Druid to survive, you can go off next turn, they try and bolt it, Forge Tender will soak this up for you, and you keep going. Eidolon Rhetoric, each player can't cast more than 1 spell each turn. I think between the Chord at the end of turn and this just helps you with your combo matchups. So you Chord at the end of the turn, grab whatever you need, put it on the battlefield, and you just win most of the time. But it's chordable. That's what I kind of like this. Almost all of these targets, except for 2, you can chord for them. Elvish Champions, other elf creatures get +1/+1 and have Forest Walk. I like this for the Green-Black X matchup. Odds are they're going to have a forest onto the battlefield. So you can just lord your creatures again and just walk right over them. Kataki War's Wage. It's pretty devastating to Affinity, so this is a good one to bring in with Affinity. Kitchen Finks. This helps shore up if you're having problems with burn. Plus it's a 3/2, and it combos really nicely with Malira. So you can just keep gaining life if you have to. Swinging in. Either they swing in, block, and they kill it, or you just keep swinging in, gaining life. And burn can only fight off so much life gain. Malira, probably one of the number 1 tier 1 decks right now out there as far as aggro goes, is Infect. So this really helps even up the odds on Infect, but you still have to survive that long. I don't think the matchup is horrible on Elves versus Infect, but it seems like it's more who's on the play, but this really helps make it a little more fair. Reclamation Sage, if you're seeing something, let's say you're playing Lantern, which you could bring in your Burrington Forge Tender. Not your Forge Tender, I'm sorry. You could bring in your Kataki for Lantern, but Lantern or Affinity, you can bring this in, hit the key card that's allowing them to go off, and then once again, you're putting more elves onto the battlefield. Selfless Spirit, I kind of like this just for the early games when they're going to try and Anger of the Gods or Pyroclasm, something like that. So instead of getting my whole board that I've tried to establish, I can just sacrifice this. That'll die instead of my entire board. I'm still playing with it. I'm not 100% set on it because it could be countered. It is a spirit. It's not an elf. But when I've had it, and especially like maybe Tron or someone who's trying to turn to Pyroclasm, this was really good. They Pyroclasm. You survive through. They didn't really expect that. And normally they're just kind of the hands out for a little bit. Spellskite, once again, this is a toolbox piece. It can come in against Burn. It can come in against Infect. It can come in against Boggles. Anything that's just trying to pump stuff up in an unfair manner. You can bring a Spellskite in, and that tends to just shore those matchups up. And 2 Thoughtseize, I run these more for the combo. Combo doesn't like it when you start ripping cards from their hand. So this is a good way to kind of slow them down, make it to your turn 3 or 4 instead, and just make it fair. I don't go overboard. As you see, it's kind of a mixed bag. I don't think any one particular matchup. I mean, your hardest matchups I think are combo because you're both just trying to combo faster. You can get kind of slow draws on this, but normally like Collected Company or Court of Calling, they'll kind of catch you up. Some other possibilities for this deck, you could still run Craterhoof Behemoth, which gives all the creatures on the battlefield the overrun effect based on the counters that the Craterhoof Behemoth gets. There's a Cloudstone Curio version where they set their imbalance Dwynen's Elites back and forth. They create infinite mana and allows them to get through their library. Those people, they tend to run Beck and Call with it as well, so they can sit there and draw cards. You'll draw your library, have infinite mana, and then you'll cast a Craterhoof and essentially overrun them there as well. I haven't played with them too much, but they're out there. Some people run Chameleon Colossus in the sideboard. It's a good card. Usually comes out as an 8/8. A lot of decks can't deal with that. I won't say it comes out. You can pump it to an 8/8. Essentially, the way it gets +X based on its power. But I'm just kind of set in on the all-in elves. The Shaman of the Pack, I go back and forth on. I really like white because white has a lot of hate cards for dominant decks in the format. There's usually an answer, either in an enchantment or in a creature. And I try and stick creature base between the Collected Companies and the Court of Callings. So, I mean, if you just want a deck, it's real explosive on the mana. I mean, you play a mana generator turn 1, you play another one turn 2, and then if you get a Heritage Druid, well, now you have 3 more mana available, and then you can easily dump your hands going into turn 2 or turn 3 and just say, beat it. And they have to. Hopefully you're getting a Arch Druid, to kind of lord your creatures out, and it manipulates mana to an extent that it's very explosive. The other thing I like, a lot of these cards will port over to Legacy. Your Elvish Visionaries are going to be in Legacy. You're going to have some sort of Mystic or a Land War Elves. Your Nettle Sentinels, your Heritage Druids, all go over to Legacy. Some people are starting to play Shaman in the Pack as a 1 or a 2 of instead of maybe as a 1 of is what I see more instead of 2 Craterhoof Behemoths for the main board. Cavern of Souls you can see played in Legacy some, but it's one of those decks you can pick it up here. It's pretty good in Modern. I'm not going to tell you it's tier 1. It's probably tier 1.5. And then a good chunk of it will go over to Legacy, and it's one of the cheaper decks in Legacy, so it's just something to consider. And my buddy, he plays Storm. Jerry, you guys know him. This is really just kind of a Storm deck. It's just you're playing Storm with creatures. So I see this a little bit better than playing actual Storm, but it's fun. That's what it's a real combo. It's real fun. So if you wanna take something up that's not too expensive and go in there and possibly still win, try Elves out. I think you'd really like it.